am going to say 5 words. Try to remember them. Face, velvet, church, daisy, red. So, memory. One memory that I have is from my AP Psychology class a couple years ago, where we learned about a man named Clive Wearing, also known as the man with a 7-second memory. Essentially, what happened in the video was Clive Wearing's wife spoke about his sister's wedding, and every time she tried to mention it again, he simply could not remember it. This is because, as I mentioned earlier, he had been described as having a 7-second memory, an inability to have any type of long-term memory. This is because he developed something known as herpes viral encephalitis, which gave him retrograde and anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new memories as well as remember old ones. Now, when I first learned about his case, I felt pity. He was once a musician for the BBC and had now been reduced to that state. And then I felt fear that something like that could happen to me or to my loved ones. Maybe you feel the same way. Now, while this case may seem severe and rare, according to the World Health Organization, nearly 10 million people are diagnosed with dementia every single year. How is it that something like memory, so fundamental to our existence, to who we are, remains so enigmatic, so confusing? How much is there left for us to scientifically uncover? Let's start with what we do know, the science of memory. Starting with sensory memory. Sensory memory is what you see and what you hear, like you hear the sound of my voice or you see me moving my hands around. With the proper focus or attention, this can go towards your short-term memory, which lasts for a little bit longer, around 1 minute. Again, with the proper focus or repetition, this can get encoded into your long-term memory. Now, the process of going from long-term back to short-term is through recall and recognition. Recall is like when you're taking a test and there's an open essay question, and you have to recall old course concepts. Recognition is like a multiple choice test, where there are many different options and you have to recognize what the right answer is. Now, for the case of Clive Wearing, he lacked the ability to not only encode memories, but also recall and recognize past ones. This put him in a mental limbo between his sensory and his short-term memory, forever living in the present. So, the next time you bomb an interview or you get a C on a test, at least you were able to remember something in the first place. Now, when it comes to memory, I've had the privilege of doing research in a specific area, screening tests. One example of a screening test is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, also known as the MoCA test. The purpose of these screening tests is to put people into normal memory, mild impairment, or severe impairment. And it involves a series of easy tasks like drawing a cube or naming animals, or drawing clocks. Now, remember those 5 words I said at the beginning of the speech? If you do, go ahead and raise your hands. Oh, I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but if you don't have your hands raised, you have memory loss. Now, of course, one question isn't going to be able to assess your entire mental state, but that question that I asked you guys was directly from the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. In case you were wondering, the words were face, velvet, church, daisy, red. Maybe this time you'll remember it. So, for those of you who didn't remember those words, it points to one of the challenges that comes with the MoCA test. It is not always successful for all patients. For those who have a lack of focus or are tired or have an impaired mental state, this may impede their ability to remember properly, and therefore their results might be incorrect. A second challenge is when it comes to education. Studies have shown that for people with 12 or less years of formal education, they have a higher rate of false positives, which means they're diagnosed at a higher rate of having memory loss, which is clearly inequitable. A third challenge is when it comes to language. While the MOCA tests boast 70 different translations, there are over 7,000 different languages in the world, leaving thousands of people without a proper translation for their language and leaving them unable to be screened. Now, hope isn't lost. We are working to rectify these issues. When it specifically comes to education, we have introduced something known as a cutoff score, which is a bonus point added to your total score if you have 12 or less years of formal education. And this has been shown through studies to reduce the amount of bias present. So we've talked about the science of memory, and we've talked about screening tests, but how do we hold onto memory? Cultures all over the world have held onto memory in various different ways, through pamphlets, art on walls, or through books, and through the Mexican tradition of the ofrenda. On the Day of the Dead, Mexicans honor their deceased loved ones and family members by putting a photo of them and their favorite foods or items on an altar. It is believed that if they are forgotten from this life, they are also removed from the afterlife forever. Many of you may remember this idea of the ofrenda from Disney's movie Coco. So it's clear that cultures have valued memory for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but how do we value memory in the modern day? Well, I and many of you outsource the jobs to our phones. The storage on our phones becomes an extension of our minds. Say, for example, when you look through the gallery of your phone, sometimes you're reminded of that one trip or that one hangout that you completely forgot about before. When I was 10 years old, I was looking through baby pictures, and I went over to my mom and proudly proclaimed that I remembered the first time I saw myself in the mirror. And you bet I fully remembered when I discovered the ultimate defining aspect of adulthood: washing dishes. Now, that may have been an excuse for me to show you baby pictures of myself, but it also goes to show that without pictures, those moments would have been lost forever. I didn't actually remember being a baby, but those snapshots captured the moment and the story, allowing it to be presented to you all today. When it comes to iPhone storage, it is not uncommon to see the warning of 10 gigabytes and then 5 gigabytes and 1 gigabyte remaining, mostly due to our photos. I'm also guilty. When it comes to having to clear out photos, I'm left at a stalemate. I'm paralyzed with the fact that I might have to choose between deleting 47 identical pictures of my dog and one blurry picture of a lake. While that might seem melodramatic, for me, deleting one picture means deleting a story, means permanently removing a moment. In that way, deleting photos becomes akin to actual memory loss, and our iPhone storage becomes a part of our minds. Now, speaking of remembering, who remembers those 5 words I said at the beginning of the speech? Okay, that's definitely more hands than before. So in case you think you might actually have memory loss now, the words were face, velvet, church, daisy, red. Now for those of you who raised your hand the second time, think, why might I have raised my hand the second time? There's the obvious answer that I repeated the words, but then there's also emotion. Maybe when I repeated the words for the second time, or I introduced the fact that it was actually from a screening test, you were shocked, surprised, maybe even a little embarrassed, and you associated that emotion with those words and were able to encode it into your long-term memory. This is assisted by the fact that the amygdala, the emotional center of our brain, is highly involved with the creation of memories, which is also why things like the Mexican ofrenda, stories, and our pictures have retained memories for so long. These memories can evoke emotions like happiness, fear or frustration. I feel frustrated when I forget things. I've lost my favorite pair of earrings 3 times, and it doesn't get better any time. And I'm also fearful about memory loss. But what is good to know is that scientists are not forgetting the pains of memory loss. Take, for example, lecanemab. Lecanemab is a treatment that specifically targets amyloid beta. Amyloid beta forms plaques in neurons, which prevents signals from being sent and received. Other proteins also include tau protein fibrils. Now, while we are having medical treatments, at the same time, we're having other treatments using things like AI, which are used to assist in the quality of life of patients. So, what can you take away from this? While we are working to support scientists in their endeavors to make treatments towards memory loss, think about the memories that you have right now. They're fragile, they might be imperfect, they could be good, they could be bad, but ultimately, they're part of who you are. Your memories are what allows you to grow and to be a person and to interact with the world. And regardless of whether good or not, they helped shape who you are today. So, to you all, go out there and be someone worth remembering. Value the memories that you have right now. To my family, my friends, and my loved ones, thank you for being a part of my own fragile memory. And to all of you, I hope that you remember, to live is to remember, and to be remembered. Thank you.